My wife Isabella stole my baby and gave it to her ex-boyfriend Julian, telling the world he was the father. They erased me completely, forced me to sign papers that legally murdered my identity as a dad. So I spent 7 years becoming the world's best male nanny and got myself hired to raise my own stolen child. Tonight I'm going to destroy them both. The DNA results flash across the massive screens at the Thorne DeVere Foundation Gala. 500 cameras broadcasting live to millions. Julian Thorne, not the father. The room erupts into chaos. Isabella DeVere's perfect smile cracks like broken glass. Her emerald eyes dart between the screen and Julian, searching for an explanation that doesn't exist. Julian stumbles backward, his golden boy face draining of color. I watch from beside the stage, still wearing my nanny uniform, still playing the role of Mr. Sebastian Nightingale, their trusted caregiver, the man who's been raising their son for the past year. The son who calls me his favorite person in the world, but that's about to change. I step forward and begin removing my disguise. The prosthetic nose comes off first, then the colored contacts. The expensive wig follows. 7 years of careful construction falling away piece by piece. Looking back, this moment was always inevitable from the second they stole my child. Isabella's face goes white when she recognizes my real features. Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Julian grabs her arm, whispering frantically in her ear. The cameras zoom in on their panic. "Hello, darling," I say into the microphone, my real voice cutting through the crowd noise. "Did you miss me?" The guests gasp. Some recognize me from old tabloid photos. Alex Morrison, the nobody musician who married Isabella DeVere 7 years ago. The man who disappeared after their messy divorce. But I never disappeared. I was planning. I pull out a second folder from my jacket. Bank statements, wire transfers, financial records that Julian thought he'd hidden well enough. "Ladies and gentlemen, your host Julian Thorne has been stealing from this very charity for years. Millions meant for orphans funding his lifestyle instead. The sirens are already wailing outside. I timed this perfectly. The FBI received an anonymous tip 30 minutes ago with everything they need. I didn't know 7 years ago that patience would become my greatest weapon." Isabella finds her voice. "You can't do this. You signed agreements, legal documents. Those NDAs don't cover charity fraud," I reply calmly. "And they definitely don't cover the fact that you stole my biological son and gave him to a criminal." The crowd is recording everything. Social media is exploding. Their carefully crafted empire crumbling in real time as I watch. Julian lunges forward. "That kid doesn't even know you exist." I smile. The kind of cold smile that comes from 7 years of suppressed rage finally finding its target. "Actually, he knows me better than he knows either of you. I've been his nanny for a year. I'm the one who tucks him in every night. I'm the one who comforts his nightmares. I'm the one he asks for when he's scared." The truth hits Isabella like a physical blow. Her legs give out and she grabs Julian's arm for support. "That's impossible. We hired you. We checked your references." European royalty is very discreet about their staff recommendations, I say. Especially when that royalty doesn't actually exist. Looking back, creating those fake references was the easiest part of this whole operation. FBI agents flood through the main entrance. The crowd parts as they move toward the stage. Julian's charity fraud just became a federal case with 500 witnesses and live television coverage. I pick up my son from where he's been sitting with the other children. He wraps his small arms around my neck, confused by the chaos but trusting me completely. The way a child should trust his father. "Mr. Nightingale, why is everyone yelling?" he asks. I look directly into Isabella's eyes as I answer. "Because some people just learned what happens when they steal from someone who has nothing left to lose." Isabella tries to reach for him. "You can't take him. I'm his mother." "You're a woman who used me as a sperm donor and threw me away," I reply. "The DNA proves he's mine. Your fraud proves you're unfit. My year as his caregiver proves he belongs with me." The FBI reaches Julian first. He's screaming about his lawyers, about his rights, about how this is all a misunderstanding. But the evidence is overwhelming. Bank records don't lie. I didn't plan on enjoying their destruction this much, but here we are. Isabella makes one last, desperate play. Alex, please. We can work something out. We can share custody. I cut her off. 7 years ago, you told me I was nothing. A mistake, a footnote in your grand narrative. You were right about one thing. I was nothing. But nothing has nothing to lose. And nothing can become anything it needs to become. I walk toward the exit, my son in my arms, as the FBI places handcuffs on both of them. Their careers are over. Their freedom is gone. Their perfect love story revealed as a fraud built on cruelty and theft. The cameras follow us out, but I don't look back. I have what I came for. They have exactly what they deserve. Some might call this revenge. I call it justice served with surgical precision and perfect timing. Looking back, I should have known 7 years ago that this was always how it would end. 7 years earlier, I was Alex Morrison. Nobody special. A musician playing coffee shops in West Hollywood, barely scraping rent together. My biggest claim to fame was getting 300 views on a YouTube cover of an Ed Sheeran song. Then Isabella DeVere walked into my life. I didn't know it then, but that coffee shop meeting wasn't an accident. She bumped into me at the counter, of been there, done that on Melrose. Spilled her latte all over my guitar case. Golden hair catching the morning light, emerald eyes that belonged on magazine covers, apologizing with that famous smile I'd seen on billboards across the city. "I'm so sorry," she said, grabbing napkins. "Let me buy you another coffee. And maybe dinner to make up for it." Isabella DeVere was asking me out. The Isabella DeVere. The woman whose last movie grossed $400 million worldwide. The woman who dated A-list actors and tech billionaires. Looking back, I should have questioned why she was interested in me. The pursuit was intoxicating. She showed up at my gigs, texted me constantly, posted photos of us on her Instagram to 30 million followers. The attention was overwhelming. Paparazzi followed us everywhere. Entertainment Tonight wanted interviews. "You're different," she told me after our third date. Real. Not like the fake people in my world. I believed every word. 3 months later, we were married in a ceremony that broke the internet. The venue was a castle in Malibu. The guest list read like an Oscar nominee announcement. The dress cost more than I'd made in 5 years. I didn't know it then, but our wedding was actually a business transaction. The honeymoon phase lasted exactly 6 weeks. Long enough for the pregnancy test to show 2 pink lines. I remember holding that plastic stick with shaking hands, tears in my eyes, thinking this was the moment our real life together began. Isabella's reaction was different. Satisfied. Like she'd just completed a successful merger. "We need to tell the world," she said immediately. "This is huge news." Looking back, her urgency should have been a red flag. The pregnancy announcement went viral. We were the golden couple. The superstar and her normal guy husband expecting their fairy tale baby. Magazine covers, talk show appearances, brand, endorsement deals worth millions. I thought I was living the dream. Really, I was starring in someone else's nightmare. The morning everything changed started like any other. Isabella was at a photo shoot. I was home writing music for our baby, working on a lullaby about being a father, about unconditional love and protection. The doorbell rang at exactly 10:47 a.m. A man in an expensive suit stood on our porch holding a briefcase. "Alex Morrison? I'm Richard Steinberg from Morrison Klein and Associates. I represent Isabella DeVere." My wife's maiden name, not the name she'd been using since our wedding. I didn't know it then, but my marriage had just been terminated. He handed me divorce papers along with ultrasound photos that were still warm from the printer. The same photos Isabella and I had looked at together just days before, planning our nursery colors. "Ms. DeVere's marriage has served its biological purpose," Steinberg said with the emotional range of a tax document. "Any attempt to claim paternity will result in complete financial destruction and criminal prosecution for harassment." The words didn't make sense. I read them 3 times before my brain processed what was happening. "There must be some mistake," I said. We're having a baby together. We're married. The marriage was a legal arrangement, he replied. The pregnancy was the desired outcome. Ms. DeVere is now terminating the arrangement and returning to her actual partner. Looking back, I should have recorded that conversation. The NDA was 47 pages long, legal language designed to erase my existence as a father. I couldn't speak to media, couldn't claim paternity, couldn't contact Isabella or the child, couldn't even mention their names in public. The settlement was insulting. $50,000. Enough to disappear, quietly, and never bother them again. Sign now or face a lawsuit that will bankrupt you before the baby is born, Steinberg said. I didn't know it then, but refusing to sign would have been my only chance to fight back. Within 72 hours, Isabella was back with Julian Thorne, the golden boy actor she'd dated for 3 years before our whirlwind romance. They announced their reunion with a photo shoot in Vanity Fair. Julian and I have found our way back to each other, Isabella told the magazine, and we're expecting a miracle baby together. A miracle baby, my baby. The child I'd helped create being presented to the world as someone else's heir. The timeline made no sense to anyone paying attention. But celebrity media doesn't ask hard questions when the story is this good. I watched from behind police barriers as they debuted my son to photographers. His face on magazine covers with Julian's last name. His nursery featured an architectural digest as part of their power couple's perfect family home. Looking back, that was the moment I stopped being a victim and started planning their destruction. The custody papers arrived a week later. Julian Thorne was listed as the biological father. I wasn't mentioned anywhere. Legally, I had never existed in this child's life. I didn't know it then, but they had just given me the motivation to become someone far more dangerous than they could imagine. I disappeared from Los Angeles the day the custody papers arrived, vanished completely. The media assumed I'd crawled away to die somewhere quiet and pathetic. They were half right about the dying part. Alex Morrison died that day. What emerged was something far more dangerous. I didn't know it then, but my complete erasure would become my greatest advantage. The first year was about grief. I rented a cabin in Montana under a fake name and let the rage consume me. Drank too much, slept too little. Watched my son's face on magazine covers as Julian and Isabella played perfect family for the cameras. But grief has an expiration date when it's mixed with purpose. The second year was about research. I studied them obsessively, their schedules, their habits, their weaknesses, Isabella's need for perfection, Julian's vanity and insecurity, their lifestyle that required constant validation and astronomical spending. Looking back, I should have realized sooner that their perfect image was built on quicksand. The third year was about becoming someone else entirely. Sebastian Nightingale, not Alex Morrison's fake identity, but a completely new person with a bulletproof backstory. I started with the credentials. Oxford University had a continuing education program in child development psychology, real classes with real professors. I flew to England and earned a legitimate certificate under my new name. Krav Maga training came next. 6 months in Israel learning close protection techniques. The official reason was defending against overzealous paparazzi. The real reason was I wanted to be dangerous if anyone tried to stop me from reclaiming my son. I didn't know it then, but every skill I learned would become essential to my plan. Language immersion followed. Mandarin in Beijing, French in Paris, Italian in Rome. Elite families loved nannies who could handle international business calls and translate for their children. The personality construction was the hardest part. Sebastian Nightingale needed to be memorable, but not threatening. Eccentric but trustworthy, the kind of person celebrities would brag about hiring. Looking back, creating the perfect character was like method acting for revenge. I learned balloon animal artistry from a circus performer in Budapest, took advanced first aid courses that qualified me for pediatric emergency response. Studied early childhood nutrition until I could design meal plans for kids with any dietary restriction. The yodeling lessons in Switzerland were Isabella's idea, though she didn't know it. I'd read an interview where she mentioned wanting a nanny who could soothe troubled children with unique techniques. The references were my masterpiece. European, royalty who valued privacy above all else. Tech billionaires who stayed off social media. Families so wealthy and discreet that verifying employment meant nothing more than a phone call to an answering service I controlled. I didn't know it then, but fake references would be easier to maintain than real ones. Prince Gustav of Luxembourg became my most impressive fictional employer, a reclusive royal who allegedly hired me to care for his nephew after a tragic skiing accident. The prince's private secretary could confirm my employment, my discretion, and my miraculous ability to help the traumatized child recover. The private secretary was me with a different accent and a voice changer app. Tech mogul Harrison Blackwell gave me my modern credentials, the eccentric genius who revolutionized data encryption and hired me to raise his adopted daughter while he worked 18-hour days. Blackwell's personal assistant raved about my innovative childcare techniques and my absolute loyalty. Again, just me with another fake voice. Looking back, I spent more time building Sebastian Nightingale's reputation than most people spend building their actual careers. Years 4 and 5 were about establishing the legend. I took jobs with B-list celebrities first, actors desperate enough for good childcare that they wouldn't ask too many questions, politicians who needed someone discreet, tech executives who valued results over background checks. Every job was perfect. Every family loved me. Every child thrived under my care. Sebastian Nightingale's reputation grew organically through elite social circles. The waiting lists started in year 6, families competing to hire me, offering double my already outrageous rates, promising bonuses and benefits that would make Fortune 500 executives jealous. I didn't know it then, but becoming legendary was just the setup for the real game. Isabella and Julian's son was becoming a problem for them. Too energetic, too curious, too demanding of attention they preferred to give their careers. They'd burned through 8 nannies in 3 years. Looking back, I should have felt sorry for my son growing up with such emotionally absent parents. The call came during a rainy Tuesday in November, Isabella's assistant explaining their unique family situation and their need for someone extraordinary, someone who could handle their spirited child and maintain absolute discretion about their private lives. "Mr. Nightingale comes very highly recommended," the assistant said. "Prince Gustav spoke of you in glowing terms." I almost smiled hearing my own fake reference quoted back to me. The interview was scheduled for the following week. 7 years of planning condensing into a single meeting where I would either gain access to my stolen son or lose everything. I didn't know it then, but the hardest part wouldn't be fooling them into hiring me. It would be standing in their house looking at my own child and pretending to be a stranger. But I was ready. Sebastian Nightingale was ready. The revenge I'd been building for 7 years was finally about to begin. Looking back, I should have prepared myself for how much it would hurt to meet my son for the first time as someone else. The Thorndevere mansion stood like a monument to stolen wealth. 37 rooms of marble and glass overlooking the Pacific Coast Highway, every surface photographed for Architectural Digest, every corner designed for Instagram perfection. I stood at their front door wearing Sebastian Nightingale's carefully crafted uniform, pressed white shirt, navy blazer, the subtle confidence of a man who'd raised royal children and tech heirs. Isabella answered the door herself. Her emerald eyes scanned my face without the slightest flicker of recognition. 7 years of prosthetics, weight training, and accent. Work had made me invisible to the woman who once claimed to love me. "Mr. Nightingale," she said with that practiced smile. "Thank you for coming. We've heard incredible things about your work." I didn't know it then, but watching her fail to recognize me would become one of my greatest satisfactions. "The pleasure is mine, Ms. DeVere," I replied in Sebastian's crisp British accent. "I understand you have a rather spirited young man who needs guidance." Julian emerged from what I recognized as his home gym, still handsome in that aging pretty boy way, still carrying himself like he owned everything he touched, including my son. "The kid's been through 8 nannies," Julian said, shaking my hand. "Hope you're ready for a challenge." Looking back, I should have told him the real challenge was about to begin. They led me through their perfect house, past awards and magazine covers featuring their fake family, past photos of my son growing up with another man's name. Each image was a knife twist, but I kept Sebastian's pleasant expression fixed in place. Tommy can be difficult, Isabella explained as we walked. Very energetic, always asking questions. He doesn't seem to connect with authority figures. Tommy. They'd named my son Tommy Thorne, not even his real last name. I didn't know it then, but hearing them complain about my child's curiosity and energy would fuel my rage for months. The playroom door opened and I saw him for the first time, in 7 years. 6 years old, dark hair like mine, Isabella's green eyes but my stubborn chin. Building an elaborate fort out of couch cushions with the focused determination I recognized from looking in mirrors. "Tommy," Isabella called, "come meet Mr. Nightingale." He looked up and our eyes met. Something electric passed between us. Recognition on a cellular level, the way blood calls to blood. "Are you going to leave like the others?" he asked directly. Looking back, that question broke my heart and strengthened my resolve simultaneously. "I'm here as long as you need me," I replied honestly. Tommy studied my face with an intensity that made Julian shift uncomfortably. Then he smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen since entering their house. "Want to see my fort? It's got secret tunnels and everything." I spent the next hour in that fort listening to my son's stories. His dreams about dragons and space adventures. His questions about why some kids had daddies who came to school events and his didn't. I didn't know it then, but those questions meant Julian was already failing as a father. Isabella hired me on the spot. The salary was outrageous, the benefits were generous. The accommodations were a private suite in their guest house, everything designed to make me grateful and loyal. "We need discretion above all else," she emphasized during contract signing. "Our family attracts a lot of attention, some of it unwanted." "Of course," I agreed. "Privacy is paramount in my profession." Looking back, she had no idea how much attention they were about to attract. My first week was about observation, learning their routines, cataloging their weaknesses. Isabella left for her yoga class every morning at 6. Julian hit the gym at 7. Tommy was alone, with rotating staff who barely spoke to him. The neglect was criminal. My son raised by housekeepers and assistants while his fake parents focused on maintaining their images. I didn't know it then, but documenting their parental failures would become crucial evidence later. The subtle sabotage started small. Julian's hair products getting mysteriously switched. His protein powder replaced with a harmless but foul-tasting substitute. His gym equipment developing minor but annoying malfunctions. Isabella's problems were more sophisticated. Her assistant's calendar developing glitches that double-booked important meetings. Her favorite designer suddenly unavailable for fittings. Her social media posts getting mysteriously delayed or deleted. Looking back, I should have realized how much I was enjoying their frustration. Tommy thrived under my care. Real meals instead of whatever the kitchen staff threw together. Educational activities instead of parking him in front of screens. Actual conversations about his thoughts and feelings. "Mr. Nightingale, why don't Mommy and Daddy read to me like you do?" he asked, one evening. "Some people show love differently," I said carefully. I didn't know it then, but those bedtime stories were the only real parenting he was getting. The permanent marker incident was Tommy's idea. He wanted to decorate the sterile white walls of the main hallway with his artwork. I provided the supplies and encouragement. Isabella discovered it during a surprise visit from a photographer. Her shriek echoed through the entire house. "How could you let him do this?" she demanded. "Children express themselves through art," I replied calmly. "Perhaps we should celebrate his creativity rather than stifle it." Looking back, watching her try to explain away her son's artwork to that photographer was deeply satisfying. The Immerse songs came next. Tommy loved music, so I taught him elaborate ballads about brave knights searching for their true fathers. Songs with lyrics just ambiguous enough to seem innocent but specific enough to make Julian uncomfortable. "Why does he keep singing about secret daddies?" Julian asked after Tommy's performance during their dinner party. Children often create fantasy narratives about adventure and mystery, I explained. It's perfectly normal developmental behavior. I didn't know it then, but those songs were already planting seeds of doubt in their guests' minds. By month 3, I had complete access to their computers, their schedules, and their private conversations. The Charity Foundation's financial records were particularly interesting. Looking back, discovering Julian's embezzlement was the moment I knew their destruction would be total. The Charity Foundation records were a goldmine of criminality. Julian had been skimming for 3 years. $2.7 million meant for orphans had funded their lifestyle instead. Private jets, designer wardrobes, that ridiculous car, collection in their garage. I copied everything. Bank transfers, email communications, board meeting minutes where Julian manipulated the numbers. Evidence so overwhelming that even his expensive lawyers couldn't spin it. I didn't know it then, but finding his embezzlement would turn simple revenge into righteous justice. The annual Thorne DeVere Foundation Gala was their crown jewel event. 500 elite guests, live television coverage, celebrity performances, all designed to showcase their humanitarian image while Julian pocketed donations. This year needs to be special, Isabella announced during breakfast. Something that shows we're a modern, forward-thinking family. Tommy was playing with his cereal, building tiny fortresses out of Cheerios, ignored by both fake parents as usual. Looking back, Isabella had just given me the perfect opening. What about incorporating Tommy into the presentation? I suggested. Children always make events more relatable and heartwarming. Julian looked up from his phone. The kid gets nervous around crowds. Not with proper preparation, I countered. Perhaps something interactive, a fun family activity that showcases your bond. I didn't know it then, but Julian's ego would make him agree to his own destruction. What kind of activity? Isabella asked, her publicity-trained mind already calculating the social media potential. A DNA challenge, I said casually. Very modern, very shareable. Who does Tommy resemble more? You could make it a charity fundraising game. The idea sparked immediate interest. Isabella's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm she usually reserved for magazine covers. That's brilliant, she said. So contemporary, so relatable, the whole nature versus nurture angle. Looking back, I should have felt guilty about how easily they walked into my trap. Julian was more hesitant. DNA testing seems a bit invasive. For a charity event. It's just a cheek swab, I explained. Completely harmless. The results could be part of the evening's entertainment. Very family-friendly. Tommy looked up from his cereal fortress. What's DNA? It's what makes you special, I told him honestly. It shows who your real family is. I didn't know it then, but those words would prove more prophetic than anyone realized. The planning consumed the next 2 months. Isabella threw herself into organizing with obsessive detail. Guest lists, catering menus, seating arrangements, designed for maximum celebrity photos. I handled the technical aspects, the DNA testing company, the laboratory analysis, the presentation setup that would broadcast results to the entire ballroom. Looking back, they trusted me completely because Sebastian Nightingale had never given them reason not to. The FBI tip required careful timing. Too early, and they might investigate before the gala. Too late, and Julian might escape before arrest. I scheduled the anonymous call for exactly 30 minutes before the DNA results would be announced. I have information about charity fraud, I told the federal hotline from a burner phone. The Thorne DeVere Foundation, their gala tonight would be the perfect time to gather evidence and witnesses. I didn't know it then, but federal agents were already familiar with Julian's suspicious spending patterns. The psychological pressure on Julian intensified as the gala approached. Tommy's obvious preference for me was becoming impossible to ignore. The child ran to me when he got hurt, asked for me at bedtime, called me his best friend. Why does he like the nanny more than me? Julian complained to Isabella after Tommy chose to spend Saturday afternoon learning magic tricks with me instead of swimming with his fake father. Children bond with their caregivers, Isabella replied dismissively. It's normal. Looking back, nothing about the situation was normal, and Julian's insecurity was becoming dangerous. The final week brought additional complications. Julian started questioning my background more aggressively, demanding to speak with my previous employers directly, pushing for verification beyond the references I'd provided. Prince Gustav is very private, I explained when Julian insisted on a phone call. He doesn't take unsolicited contact well. Then have him call me, Julian pressed. I need to verify your credentials personally. I didn't know it then, but Julian's paranoia was actually helping my plan by making him more suspicious and agitated. The solution was elegant. Prince Gustav's secretary called Julian's office that afternoon. I used a voice modulation app and an imperious tone that suggested royalty doesn't appreciate being questioned by American actors. Mr. Thorne, I said in my royal secretary voice, His Highness finds your demands for verification rather presumptuous. Mr. Nightingale's service to our family has been exemplary. Any further inquiries will be considered harassment. Julian backed down immediately. Celebrities were terrified of offending actual royalty. Looking back, I should have realized how satisfying it would be to make Julian grovel to my fake persona. The night before the gala, I recorded a message for Tommy, explaining who I really was, why I had to pretend to be someone else, how much I loved him and had missed him. Tomorrow everything changes, I told the camera. But no matter what happens, remember that your real daddy never stopped fighting to come home to you. The video was insurance. If something went wrong during the reveal, at least my son would know the truth. I didn't know it then, but nothing would go wrong because I had planned for every possible scenario. Isabella spent the morning of the gala getting professionally photographed for 3 different magazines. Julian had his hair and makeup done by the same team that worked on his movie sets, both of them treating the charity event like a movie premiere. Tommy helped me set up the DNA testing station. His excitement was genuine. He thought we were just playing a fun science game. Looking back, my son's trust in me was the only pure thing in that house of lies. The guests started arriving at 6. Hollywood royalty, tech billionaires, politicians who needed to be seen supporting children's charities, all of them about to witness the most spectacular destruction of reputation in entertainment history. I didn't know it then, but some of them were already suspicious about Julian's sudden wealth increase over the past 3 years. The ballroom glittered with 500 of the most powerful people in entertainment. Crystal chandeliers cast perfect lighting for the dozen camera crews broadcasting live. Isabella and Julian worked the crowd like seasoned politicians, posing for photos and collecting checks for their fake charity. Tommy stood beside me at the DNA testing station, wearing his miniature tuxedo and beaming with excitement. He had no idea he was about to become the center of the biggest scandal in Hollywood history. "When do we do the science experiment, Mr. Nightingale?" he whispered. "Very soon," I promised, adjusting his bow tie. "Remember what we practiced." Looking back, my son's innocence was the only thing keeping me calm before detonating 7 years of planning. Isabella took the microphone first. Her speech about supporting disadvantaged children was flawless. Practiced tears at exactly the right moments. Passionate delivery that had the audience reaching for their wallets. "Tonight, we celebrate family," she declared. "The bonds that make us strongest. The love that defines us." I didn't know it then, but those words would become brutally ironic in about 10 minutes. Julian followed with his presentation about the foundation's accomplishments. Charts showing money distributed to orphanages, photos of grateful children receiving educational support, all fabricated to hide the millions he'd stolen. "Every dollar donated tonight goes directly to children in need," he lied smoothly. "No administrative costs, no overhead, pure charity." Looking back, watching him lie about robbing orphans while FBI agents gathered outside was deeply satisfying. The DNA presentation was scheduled for 8:30. Peak audience attention, maximum social media engagement, perfect timing for complete destruction. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced from the stage, my British accent carrying perfectly through. The sound system. Tonight's special presentation celebrates the science of family bonds. I didn't know it then, but several guests were already live streaming on Instagram and TikTok. Tommy joined me on stage, waving to the crowd like the natural performer he was. Isabella and Julian stood at the side, beaming with parental pride they'd never actually earned. We're going to discover which parent Tommy resembles most, I explained, holding up the DNA testing kit. Modern science meeting family fun. The cheek swabs were quick and painless. Tommy giggled as I collected his sample. Julian submitted his with confident swagger. He truly believed he was Tommy's biological father. Looking back, Julian's certainty made his upcoming humiliation even more satisfying. Results will be processed in real time, I announced. While we wait, let's hear from Tommy about his favorite family memories. My son took the microphone with surprising confidence. My favorite times are with Mr. Nightingale, he said clearly. He reads me stories about brave knights finding their real daddies. The audience chuckled. Isabella smiled tightly. Julian's jaw clenched slightly. I didn't know it then, but Tommy was already undermining their perfect family image without realizing it. The laboratory technician appeared on the giant screens via video link. A serious woman in a white coat holding official-looking documents. The DNA analysis is complete, she announced, comparing the child's sample to Julian Thorne's sample. The room fell silent. Cameras zoomed in on Julian's confident face. The probability of paternity is 0%, she continued. Julian Thorne is not the biological father. Looking back, I should have prepared myself for how beautiful Julian's expression of shock would be. The ballroom erupted, gasps, whispers, phone cameras capturing every second. Julian stumbled backward like he'd been physically struck. That's impossible, he stammered into his microphone. There must be some mistake. But wait, I said calmly, pulling out a second sample tube. We have a mystery donor sample to compare as well. Isabella's face went white. She knew exactly whose DNA was in that tube. I didn't know it then, but the look of dawning horror in her eyes would sustain me for years. The mystery sample shows a 99.9% probability of paternity, the technician announced. This is the child's biological father. The crowd was in chaos now. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing constantly, social media exploding with theories and speculation. Julian grabbed the microphone. Who provided that sample? This is obviously some kind of setup. I began removing my disguise. The prosthetic nose came off first, then the colored contacts. The expensive wig followed. 7 years of careful construction falling away piece by piece. Looking back, each piece of Sebastian Nightingale I discarded felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. Hello, Isabella, I said in my real voice. Hello, Julian. Did you miss me? The recognition hit them like physical blows. Isabella's knees buckled. Julian's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. Alex Morrison, someone in the crowd whispered. The name spread through the ballroom like wildfire. I didn't know it then, but half the guests were already calling their publicists and lawyers. 7 years ago you stole my son, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. You erased me from his life. You made him call another man daddy. Tommy looked up at me with confusion but no fear. He trusted me completely, even as his world exploded around him. But you made one crucial mistake, I said, pulling out the folder of financial documents. You trusted a man who steals from orphans to raise my child. Looking back, the moment I revealed Julian's embezzlement was when their destruction became total. The FBI agents entered through the main doors as sirens wailed outside. Julian's charity fraud had become a federal case with 500 witnesses and live television coverage. Julian Thorne, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement of charitable funds, the lead agent announced. Isabella tried to run toward the exit, but more agents blocked her path. This is insane. I didn't know about the money. I didn't know it then, but her panic would be preserved forever on live television. Mommy, Tommy called out. reaching for Isabella as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. What's happening? I lifted my son into my arms as chaos consumed the ballroom. His small hands gripped my jacket as cameras captured every second. "I'm your real daddy," I whispered in his ear. "I came back for you. I never stopped fighting to come home." Looking back, feeling my son's arms around my neck was worth 7 years of patient planning. Isabella screamed my name as the FBI led her away. Julian was shouting about lawyers and rights and how this was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. I walked toward the exit with Tommy in my arms. The crowd parted like I was radioactive. Some were recording. Others were calling their own lawyers. "Where are we going, Daddy?" Tommy asked quietly. "Home," I said simply. "We're going home." I didn't know it then, but home was wherever my son and I were together. The cameras followed us out into the night, but I didn't look back. Behind us, the wreckage of 2 careers burned in spectacular fashion. Ahead of us, freedom. Some people call it revenge. I call it coming home.